Ever wondered what happened when the king missed the mark? Did Elvis Presley, the music legend who changed the course of popular culture, ever record songs that make fans wince? Number 7. Old MacDonald. Remember that childhood nursery rhyme about farm animals? Well, Elvis decided to put his rock and roll spin on it, and the result might make you question everything you thought you knew about the king of rock and roll. In 1971, Elvis Presley released Old MacDonald as part of his album Elvis. Now, this wasn't some ironic B-side or a joke track buried at the end of an album. It was a full-fledged Elvis interpretation of the children's classic. Picture this: the most iconic rock and roll figure in history, the man who scandalized America with his hip movements, belting out A-I-E-I-O with complete sincerity. Elvis puts his signature vocal inflections on lines about cows mooing and pigs inking. He even throws in some of his classic ah-ha-ha vocalizations between animal sounds. The backing vocalists join in with enthusiastic animal impressions that would make any kindergarten teacher proud. Elvis was no stranger to covering unexpected songs, transforming them with his unique style. Sometimes this approach resulted in groundbreaking reinterpretations that changed music history, like his take on Hound Dog. But with Old MacDonald, not even the king's charisma could elevate this nursery rhyme to cool status. The track runs for an astonishing 2 minutes and 33 seconds, which might not sound long, but feels like an eternity when you're listening to a grown man singing about farm animals with the same intensity he brought to Suspicious Minds. Presley recorded this during a period when his career was experiencing something of a renaissance. Following his 1968 comeback special, Elvis had returned to the charts with hits like In the Ghetto and Suspicious Minds. His Vegas performances were selling out, and he was back on top, which makes the choice to record Old MacDonald all the more puzzling. Some music historians suggest that Elvis was focusing on creating family-friendly content during this period. Others point to the influence of Colonel Tom Parker, Elvis's notorious manager, who often pushed for commercial decisions over artistic ones. Whatever the reason, Old MacDonald stands as one of those moments where Elvis's discography takes an unexpected and uncomfortable detour into cringe territory. Despite the song's bizarre nature, dedicated Elvis fans have found ways to defend it. Some appreciate the pure, unironic joy in his performance. Others view it as evidence of Elvis's willingness to have fun with music rather than taking himself too seriously. Still, even the most devoted Elvis enthusiasts might reach for the skip button when this barnyard rocker comes on. Number 6. Do the Clam. Have you ever heard a song that seemed created solely to capitalize on a short-lived dance craze? In 1965, Elvis recorded Do the Clam for his movie Girl, Happy, and it represents everything that went wrong with his film career in the 1960s. This song wasn't just a forgettable track. It was the musical embodiment of how Elvis's undeniable talent was often squandered on formulaic movie soundtracks. Do the Clam instructed listeners in how to perform a non-existent dance move that involved, wait for it, imitating a clam. The lyrics offer detailed instructions. Do the clam, dig right in, and do the clam, dig right in, and do the clam. Elvis, one of the most naturally sensual performers in music history, was reduced to singing about bivalve mollusks with faux enthusiasm. The backdrop to this musical misstep was Elvis's film career, which had taken a troubling turn. After showing initial promise as an actor in films like King Creole, where critics acknowledged his dramatic potential, Elvis became trapped in a cycle of formulaic beach movies and light white musical comedies. Colonel Parker, prioritizing quantity over quality, had Elvis cranking out 3 movies a year at one point. These films followed a strict formula: exotic location, pretty girls, contrived plot, and songs that could be quickly recorded and forgotten. Do the Clam exemplifies this approach. It wasn't created because Elvis or his musicians felt artistically inspired to celebrate shellfish. It existed solely as a vehicle for a choreographed beach scene in Girl Happy. The recording itself sounds rushed, with Elvis delivering the lyrics with an almost audible resignation. The backing track feels generic, lacking the punch and energy that characterized Elvis's best rock and roll work. The background vocals repeatedly chant, "Do the Clam," with an enthusiasm that seems forced at best. What makes the song particularly cringe-inducing is the knowledge of what Elvis was capable of as an artist. This was the same performer who had electrified American music with groundbreaking recordings like "That's All Right, Mama" and "Heartbreak Hotel." The man who could convey profound emotion in ballads like "Love Me Tender" was now instructing teenagers how to snap your fingers and clap your hands and do the clam. Music critics had not been kind to this period of Elvis's career. Many see these movie songs as the nadir of his artistic output, representing a commercial sellout that temporarily damaged his musical legacy. Rock historian Peter Grorlich referred to these film soundtracks as the least significant work in Presley's career. By 1965, Elvis himself was growing increasingly frustrated with the quality of his movie songs. In a rare moment of rebellion against Colonel Parker, Elvis would soon pursue the television comeback special that would revitalize his career in 1968. But before that renaissance, audiences had to suffer through "Do the Clam" and other similarly contrived tracks. Today, the song serves as a relic of a specific period in American popular culture, when beach movies were in vogue and dance crazes could be manufactured through cinema. The cringe factor comes not just from the silly lyrics or concept, but from hearing a budding musical talent wasting his gifts on such disposable material. Number 5. Song of the Shrimp. Can you imagine Elvis Presley, the rebellious rocker who changed the face of American music, singing a heartfelt ballad from the perspective of a shrimp? It happened, and it's every bit as bizarre as it sounds. In 1962, Elvis recorded "Song of the Shrimp" for the soundtrack of his film, Girls, Girls, Girls. This nautical oddity stands as perhaps the strangest entry in Elvis's vast catalog, a distinction not easily earned. The song tells the tale of a mother shrimp warning her child about the dangers of the ocean, specifically the threat of being caught and eaten. Yes, Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, earnestly sings lines like little shrimp, swimming in the water, little shrimp, dear little daughter." The lyrics chronicle the shrimp's journey from carefree swimming to being caught in a net, cooked, and ultimately eaten at a dinner party. If the concept alone doesn't qualify this as one of Elvis's most cringe-inducing recordings, the execution certainly seals the deal. Elvis sings with dramatic intensity, as if delivering a tragic aria rather than a tale about crustacean doom. The arrangement features Spanish guitar, flourishes, and orchestral swells that aim for pathos but land squarely in the realm of unintentional comedy. The song originated from a writing partnership between Sid Tepper and Roy C. Bennett, who wrote over 40 songs for Elvis movies. This particular track ends the bizarre material Elvis, was given during his Hollywood years. His film contract required him to record whatever songs were selected for his movies, regardless of quality or suitability. Song of the Shrimp appears in Girls, 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 during a scene where Elvis's character, a fishing boat captain named Ross Carpenter, serenades a group of children. The film, directed by Norman Taurog, was part of the formula movies that dominated Elvis's career in the 1960s. These films poditized marketable soundtracks over storyline or artistic merit. The movie received mixed reviews, with critics praising Elvis's natural charisma, but criticizing the predictable plot. However, even among the film's detractors, Song of the Shrimp stood out as an unusual low point. The New York Times review specifically mentioned the song, calling it a peculiar choice for the rock and roll icon. Music historian Colin Escott later commented that the song represented everything wrong with Elvis's movie career, forced to record material that no self-respecting rock and roll artist would ever choose. By this point in his career, Elvis had little creative control over his recordings, with Colonel Parker and movie producers dictating his musical direction. What makes Song of the Shrimp particularly cringe-worthy is the contrast between the song and the revolutionary artist Elvis had been just a few years earlier. This was the same performer who had shocked and thrilled audiences with Jailhouse Rock and Heartbreak Hotel, songs that changed the trajectory of American popular music. Now he was earnestly crooning about the life cycle of shellfish. The recording session for Song of the Shrimp reportedly took place at Radio Resorters in Hollywood in March 1962. Session musicians included guitar virtuoso Barney Kessel and members of the Jordanaires providing backing vocals. These world-class musicians found themselves creating a musical backdrop for lyrics about a shrimp meeting its demise. Despite its undeniable strangeness, Song of the Shrimp has achieved a certain cult status among Elvis collectors. It represents such an outlier in his catalog that it's become a curiosity, a testament to how even the greatest artists can find themselves recording truly bizarre material when they relinquish artistic control. Number 4. U.S. Mail. Have you ever heard a song so full of groan-inducing puns that you can't decide whether to laugh or cringe? In 1968, Elvis released U.S. Mail, a country rock song built entirely around an extended wordplay between mail, a man, and mail, postal delivery. The song stands as one of the most heavy-handed attempts at clever wordplay in Elvis's catalog, resulting in a listening experience that might make you physically uncomfortable. In U.S. Mail, Elvis assumes the character of a threatening, possessive boyfriend, warning off potential rivals for his girlfriend's affection. The entire song hinges on the mail homophone, with lyrics like, "I'm the U.S. Mail and don't you forget it, a special delivery and I'm gonna get it." Throughout the track, Elvis delivers lyrics about being stamped and addressed, and warns other men not to tamper with U.S. Mail. The song was written by Jerry Reed, a talented guitarist and yelker who actually plays on the recording. Reed was known for his humorous compositions, but U.S. Mail pushes the concept past its breaking point, hammering the mail metaphor for nearly 2.5 minutes with no subtlety whatsoever. What makes this song particularly cringe-worthy is Elvis's deadly serious delivery. He adopts a tough guy persona, growling frets through the postal puns as if he's completely unaware of how silly the lyrics are. There's no wink to the audience, no acknowledgement of the absurdity, just Elvis fully committed to lines like, This letter that you're reading was written by a male, the U.S. male. The song was recorded on January 16th, 1968, at RCA's Studio B in Nashville during a productive session that yielded several other tracks. This period represented something of a transitional time for Elvis. He was preparing to break away from making formulaic movies and was months away from his famous '68 comeback special, which would rejuvenate his career. U.S. Male sits awkwardly between Elvis's movie soundtrack era and his artistic renaissance. Musically, the track actually features impressive instrumentation. Jerry Reed's distinctive guitar playing, known as claw style, provides a driving rhythm, and Schenk is his technical prowess. The backing band delivers a solid country rock performance that would be entirely respectable if not yoked to the relentless postal metaphor. U.S. Male was released as a single in March 1968 and reached number 28 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart, a modest success by Elvis's standards. The B-side was Stay Away, a far more straightforward rock song that many fans and critics consider superior. The relative commercial success of U.S. Male demonstrates Elvis's enduring popularity, even when working with questionable material. Music critics have been divided on the song over the years. Some appreciate it as an example of Elvis's willingness to venture into country music and his ability to deliver character-driven performances. Others view it as a novelty song that relies too heavily on its central pun, wearing out its welcome long before the song concludes. The music video, or promotional film as they were called then, for U.S. Male, adds another layer of cringe to the experience. Elvis appears in full cowboy attire, including an elaborate hat, performing with exaggerated seriousness as he delivers lines about postal regulations and romantic possessiveness. In Elvis's vast catalog of over 700 recorded songs, U.S. Male stands out not for being poorly performed or produced, but for its commitment to a concept that simply doesn't deserve such dedication. It's Elvis's full-throated embrace of the gimmick that makes listening to U.S. Male such an uncomfortable experience, even for devoted fans. Number 3. There's no room to rumba in a sports car. Is this the most ridiculous song title in Elvis's catalog? In 1963, Elvis recorded "There's No Room to Rumba in a Sports Car" for the soundtrack to his film Fun in Akapuluka. The song is exactly what the title suggests, a detailed musical complaint about the impracticality of dancing the rumba within the confined space of a sports car. Yes, this was an actual Elvis Presley recording. The lyrics detail the romantic frustrations of a couple who want to dance but are constrained by their vehicle choice. There's no room to rumba in a sports car. You can't break loose and really go far. Elvis proceeds to explain in painstaking detail why various dance moves are impossible in a compact automobile, suggesting they should have traveled in a limousine instead. This song emerged during Elvis's Hollywood period, when he was churning out about 3 films per year, each requiring its own soundtrack. Fun in Akapuluka was his 13th movie, directed by Richard Thorpe and Co., starring Ursula Andress. The film followed the typical formula: exotic location, romantic plot, and plenty of opportunities for Elvis to sing. There's No Room to Rumba in a Sports Car was written by Fred Wise and Randy Starr, songwriters who specialized in movie soundtracks. The song reflects the priorities of Elvis's movie music during this period: catchy, disposable tunes that served the plot rather than artistic expression. In the film, The song accompanies a scene where Elvis's character drives a small sports car with his love interest, played by Andras. What makes the song particularly cringe-inducing is the forced nature of both its concept and execution. The Rumba was already somewhat passé by 1963, and combining it with complaints about sports car dimensions created a scenario so specific and contrived that it's hard to imagine anyone relating to it. Yet Elvis sings with complete conviction, as if addressing a universal problem that has plagued humanity for generations. The recording took place at Radio Resurgence in Hollywood on January 22, 1963. Session musicians included Hal Blaine on drums and the Jordanaires providing backing vocals. These were world-class musicians, applying their considerable talents to a song about dance space constraints in compact vehicles. The arrangement doesn't help matters. With its forced Latin rhythm and overeager maraca shaking the track, seems desperate to establish its south-of-the-border credentials to match the Akapuluka setting of the film. The backing vocals repeat the awkward title phrase with an enthusiasm that feels increasingly unwarranted with each iteration. Fun in Akapuluka was actually a commercial success, reaching number 6 on the Variety box office chart. The soundtrack album peaked at number 3 on the Billboard album chart. This commercial performance reinforced Colonel Parker's conviction that the formula was working, leading to more films and soundtracks of similar quality. Music critics have not been kind to this song over the decades. Rock historian John Morsland described it as representing the nadir of forced concepts in Presley's film career, while Elvis biographer Peter Gurulnik cited it as an example of how Presley's natural musical instincts were subdued by commercial considerations. Even Elvis himself reportedly had reservations about some of his movie songs. By the mid-1960s, he was expressing frustration to friends and colleagues about the quality of material he was recording. Singer Jofford Jimmy Webb recalled meeting Elvis during this period and noted, "He was embarrassed by some of the songs he had to perform in those movies. He was a serious musician trapped in a commercial machine." "There's no room to rumba in a sports car" embodies a particular kind of Hollywood-manufactured cringe, where a contrived scenario is stretched into a full song with no regard for artistic integrity or common sense. The result is a recording that makes listeners squirm, not because it's offensive or poorly performed, but because it's so nakedly artificial and contrived. Number 2. Yoga is as yoga does. Did Elvis really record a song mocking yoga? In 1967, at a time when Eastern spiritual practices were gaining popularity in Western counterculture, Elvis recorded "Yoga is as Yoga Does" for the soundtrack of his film, Easy Come, Easy Go. This bewildering track stands as one of the most tone-deaf and culturally insensitive entries in the King's catalog, made all the more uncomfortable by its attempts at humor. The song features Elvis and actress Elsa Lanchester trading verses about yoga, with Elvis playing a character skeptical of the practice, while Lanchester portrays a yoga enthusiast. The lyrics are filled with painful puns and stereotypes. Yoga is as yoga does. It ties the body up in knots, with muscles wrapped around your ears and twisted into sailor's knots. Elvis sings about practitioners being wound up like a ball of twine, while Lanchester responds with exaggerated claims about yoga's benefits. Easy Come, Easy Go was Elvis's 24th film, directed by John Rich. By this point, the quality of Elvis's movie projects had declined substantially. In this particular film, Elvis played a Navy frogman turned treasure hunter. The movie was both a commercial and critical disappointment, with critics singling out the forced musical numbers as particularly egregious. Yoga Is As Yoga Does was written by Sid Tepper and Roy C. Bennett, the same team responsible for Song of the Shrimp. The duo wrote over 40 songs for Elvis movies, often creating music to fit specific scenes regardless of quality or suitability for Elvis's talents. This song was designed for a sequence where Elvis's character encounters a yoga studio, providing an excuse for comedy at the expense of Eastern practices. What makes the song especially cringe-inducing is his dismissive treatment of yoga, which is portrayed as nothing more than a silly fad involving uncomfortable contortions. This casual mockery feels particularly uncomfortable, given that Elvis would later develop a genuine interest in spiritual matters, reading books on Eastern philosophy and metaphysics. The irony that the man singing this dismissive song would later embrace aspects of the very spirituality he was mocking adds another layer of discomfort for modern listeners. The recording itself doesn't help matters. Elvis sounds disengaged, delivering the lyrics with little conviction, while Lanchester goes all in with an exaggerated performance that borders on caricature. The backing track features sitar-like sounds and exotic musical flourishes that feel like a crude attempt at evoking Indian music without any actual understanding of it. Yoga Is As Yoga Does was recorded at Radio Resorters in Hollywood on September 28, 1966. By this point, Elvis was increasingly disillusioned with his movie career. Guitarist Jerry Scheff, who worked with Elvis during this period, later recalled, "You could hear the resignation in his voice on some of those soundtrack recordings. He knew what he was capable of, and these songs weren't it." The song represents a particular moment in American popular culture, when Eastern spiritual practices were entering mainstream awareness, but were often misunderstood or caricatured. The Maharishi Mahesh Yogi hadn't yet met the Beatles, and yoga was still considered exotic and foreign to many Americans. Rather than approaching this cultural exchange with curiosity or respect, Yoga Is As Yoga Does opts for the easiest, most reductive jokes. What's particularly tragic about songs like this is the missed opportunity they represent. Elvis was at his best when engaging with diverse musical traditions. His work blended gospel, blues, country, and R&B into something revolutionary. He had the artistic sensitivity to appreciate different cultural expressions when given the chance. But trapped in the movie soundtrack machine, he was reduced to performing material that treated cultural differences as nothing more than fodder for cheap jokes. Colonel Tom Parker, Elvis's manager, bears much of the responsibility for this situation. Prioritizing quantity over quality, Parker negotiated deals that required Elvis to record whatever songs were chosen for his films. By the mid-1960s, this arrangement had resulted in a string of subpar recordings that damaged Elvis's musical credibility, just as rock music was entering its most experimental and creative phase. Number 1. No Room to Rumba in a Sports Car, reprise. Would you believe Elvis recorded the same cringe-worthy song twice? In a move that defies logical explanation, Elvis recorded No Room to Rumba in a Sports Car, not once but twice for the Fun in Akapuluka soundtrack. The reprise version doubles down on everything that makes the original uncomfortable, creating what many Elvis historians consider the ultimate cringe moment in his catalog. The reprise differs slightly from the original, with altered lyrics and arrangement, but the core concept remains unchanged, complaining about the inability to properly dance in a compact automobile. This second version appears later in the film Fun in Akapuluka, creating the bizarre situation where audiences were subjected to this concept twice within the same movie. What makes the reprise particularly excruciating is the sense of déjà vu it creates. Hearing Elvis revisit the already questionable concept feels like someone repeating a joke that wasn't funny the first time, mistakenly believing the problem was that people didn't hear it properly. The reprise suggests that someone involved in the production, whether the director, producer, or music supervisor, genuinely believed that audiences needed more of this specific song. The recording session for the reprise took place on the same day as the original version, January 22, 1963, at Radio Resorgence in Hollywood. Session notes indicate that Elvis recorded multiple takes of both versions, suggesting that considerable time and effort were devoted to perfecting these songs about Rumba space constraints. Fun in Akapuluka was part of Elvis's collaboration with Hal Wallace Productions and Paramount Pictures. The film followed a proven formula that had generated reliable, if unspectacular, returns at the box office. By this point, Elvis's film career had settled into a comfortable pattern. Movies set in exotic locations with simple plots designed primarily as vehicles for musical numbers. What remains puzzling about the reprise is why anyone thought it necessary. Film soundtracks of the era typically featured unique songs, rather than multiple versions of the same track. Some Elvis historians have speculated that the decision stemmed from production challenges. Perhaps another planned song couldn't be completed, leading to the reprise as a last-minute solution. Elvis's performance on the reprise sounds even less engaged than on the original version. There's a detectable weariness in his delivery, as if even he couldn't believe he was recording this concept a second time. The backing vocalists similarly sound like they're going through the motions, creating an atmosphere of musical resignation. By 1963, Elvis was increasingly expressing private frustration about his movie songs. Marty Lacker, a member of Elvis's inner circle known as the Memphis Mafia, later recalled Elvis saying, "How can they expect me to sing this garbage with a straight face?" Though it's not confirmed, he was specifically referring to No Room to Rumba. The sentiment applies perfectly to this situation. The reprise version runs slightly shorter than the original, clocking in at just under 2 minutes. This brevity might be its only mercy, but it also creates the strange impression of a song that exists merely to remind viewers of the earlier, equally unnecessary version. Music critic Greil Marcus, in his analysis of Elvis's career, cited the Rumba reprise as perhaps the clearest example of how the movie's soundtrack system had reduced one of music's most true voices to a punchline. Marcus argued that moments like this contributed to Elvis's declining cultural relevance during the mid-1960s, just as groups like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones were revolutionizing popular music. The existence of both the original, No Room to Rumba in a Sports Car, and its reprise encapsulates everything that went wrong with Elvis's Hollywood, period. Artistic decisions, driven by contractual obligations, other than musical merit, concepts stretched beyond their breaking point, and the tragic waste of the singular talent on the trail far beneath his capabilities. Does any other major musical artist have such a bizarre dual recording in their official catalog? Would Elvis's career have taken a different path if he'd been able to escape these film obligations sooner?